have an open mind about these things.
David Cairns.
My honourable friend says she's not in a position to speculate on IBM's reasons, and of course she's quite right. When some of us met with IBM, we were told the reason for making this change was because of the comparatively poor performance of IBM UK and Ireland. And yet in his final missive to workers issued yesterday, Brendan Riley said it had been a privilege to lead one of the best performing parts of IBM UK. So there's a clear inconsistency in the message that IBM is sending out. Either it's a poor performer or it's a good performer. The reality, I'm afraid to say, is that honourable gentlemen are right. Whether the government can do anything about this or not, I don't know. This is a redundancy on the cheap. That's what IBM are up to.
Well, my honourable friend has made the points he's made in his characteristically laser-like manner, and I'm sure, again, the IBM board will be looking at what he said. I do have to say, though, the company does meet the balance of cost in the defined benefit scheme, and there's nothing that it's suggested that takes it below any requirements or minimum that pension law would require. And I have to put that on the record. So the flexibility around that doesn't take them into territory that puts them on the wrong side of regulation or the law, as the regulator has pointed out. Now, yes, I'm happy to talk.
The Minister, I mean, one of the points that's been made to me by my constituents is that they don't believe that it would be possible to make changes of this nature in other parts of Europe. Is that something that she's looked into, whether British pensions law gives the same protections as other parts of Europe? And if not, is that something she'd be willing to have a look at?
It's very difficult. I'm always willing to try to learn from the systems and the approaches either to industrial relations, pensions law, welfare or any other area from other countries. I think the more that we all do that, the more we have to learn from each other. However, in the pensions area, it's quite distinct. Britain is unusual in having such a large proportion of its workforce having accrued rights in defined benefit schemes when you compare it, Mrs. Dean, to other European countries, and it usually leads you down some very peculiar and not very accurate paths to generalise about European issues and then try to bring that back to what is a very different circumstance with additional pensions in this country. So I'm not saying no, but it's often not easy to compare. You're not comparing, Mrs. Dean, like for like when you do that. Now, the Honourable... Yes, of course.
One of the things this government has done is greatly to increase the responsibilities of trustees. Yes. And one of the responsibilities of trustees, of course, is to ensure fairness between the different members of the pension scheme. Would the Minister join with me in encouraging the trustees to think very carefully about their responsibilities in this field?
Again, I'm more than happy to endorse the observations that the Honourable Gentleman has made about the duties, fiduciary and others, of trustees. They have a very great responsibility in the whole area of defined benefit pensions law. It can sometimes be quite a complex one, but I note the current plans of the trustees in this particular pension scheme to check some of these issues by going to the courts, and obviously they have to do their duty as expected and laid down in law to protect the best interests of the people that benefit from their pension scheme, their members, and clearly also they have to have a look at how fairness goes across the system. But we do have legacy defined benefit schemes here which are particularly generous, and then as time has gone on, less generous schemes that other employees are involved in, and how one would balance fairness across that is a moot point in terms of access to rights. What the government can do is guarantee, as it has done in law, accrued rights, those rights that have already been paid for and have been gathered up by individual employees with the contributions that they've made over the years. It's a lot harder to get ourselves into a circumstance where companies can't redesign in any way going forwards pension schemes that have been set up for many years. And as Pensions Minister, I have to ensure that the law tries to make the right balance, Mrs. Dean, between defending those rights that have already accrued, which is an absolute certainty in law as this Parliament has passed, but also get to a circumstance where the law is flexible enough to allow flexibilities both for employees and employers going forwards, since we are not talking about the provision of pensions in defined benefit final salary schemes, which are compulsory in this country. The provision of a defined benefit scheme is voluntary. It's for employers to decide whether they wish to offer them. And I am acutely aware, when I look at any potential policy changes that I might wish to bring to this Parliament to discuss, that I have to think about what effect that would have on the willingness of employers out there to continue to provide defined benefit schemes. I'm happy to give way to my honourable friend.
I'm very, very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. Can I say, further to the point raised by the honourable gentleman regarding the trustees, I mean, my constituents, Nick Hodgson and Helen Sparling, tell me that after the 2006 changes, the subsequent changes IBM made were not agreed by the trustees. Is she prepared to at least look into this, as this would seem to be a very fertile area for further examination? If these current changes were not approved by the trustees, what is the role of the trustees in this matter?
Well, certainly, Mrs. Dean, it would be certainly if the honourable gentleman has got, my honourable friend, has got any information of that kind, he should certainly put it before the regulator. I know that the regulator's been written to by several members, and members of this House, but also members of the IBM scheme itself, has had a look and so far has found nothing that's illegal or that would fall foul of current regulations about the way that IBM have technically dealt with the scheme. If my honourable friend has got further evidence of that sort, then he should certainly send it on, I suggest, to the regulator. Now, I wanted just, Mrs. Dean, to deal with this issue that the honourable member for Romsey raised about the government perhaps legislating to stop sudden changes. I don't believe that sudden changes in pension funds are ever very desirable, particularly. We've got legislation in place which means employers are required to consult for at least 60 days before they bring changes into being. But again, we have to keep that balance in the law between putting people, employers, off offering defined benefit schemes at all by making the way the regulations work too inflexible. We still have 2.6 million people in the private sector accruing rights in defined benefit schemes, and I'm acutely aware that we have to put in place a structure of law that enables us to try to assist both employers who wish to offer these schemes and employees who benefit greatly from them to continue to do so. So again, there's a balance, but there is a requirement to consult, and my understanding is that IBM have done that. My understanding was, perhaps members who know more will correct me if I'm wrong, that IBM have extended the time when they were going to introduce these changes from April 2010 to April 2011. But that's what the local trade union representative told me when I had a word with him. But I think it's important that out of the debate that we've had today, that actually the IBM board are looking at the debates that we've had, and they will take due notice of the expressions of surprise, worry, anger that we've seen in the debate today. I certainly have a great deal of sympathy with those feelings. I think they've been well reflected in the debate, and I hope that IBM will be taking note of that.
The sitting stands adjourned.